All right, today we're going to deconstruct one of finance's most powerful and also most dangerous tools, leverage. It's this concept that, well, it promises absolute fortunes and threatens catastrophic collapse, often in the very same breath.
So let's start with a question that's kind of haunted the edges of human achievement forever, right? From the artist's studio to the physicist's lab, what is the line between genius and insanity? You know, that razor-thin edge where a truly bold vision just tips over into complete folly.
Well, in the world of finance, that line isn't just some state of mind. It's a number on a balance sheet. It is a tool with the power to build empires or to turn them to dust, and it's called leverage.
And this gets us to our first really big idea. We have to understand the core paradox of this tool. How can the exact same mechanism be responsible for creating legendary wealth and the kind of collapse that can bring entire economies to their knees? The fundamental truth about leverage, and you gotta get this, is its perfect, almost beautiful symmetry. You should think of it as a totally neutral force, kind of like gravity. It doesn't care if you're going up or going down, it just amplifies the pull. So the very same mechanics that create these phenomenal profits also guarantee devastating, magnified losses when things change direction.
Okay, so let's get into it. How does this financial lever actually function? What is the math behind all the magic and, of course, all the madness?
Well, we can actually measure this amplification with a metric called the degree of financial leverage, or DFL for short. The best way to think about it is like a sensitivity dial. It tells you exactly how much your bottom line, your earnings, are going to move for every little change in your company's operating income. A high DFL means even tiny ripples in business performance can create absolute tidal waves for shareholders. And this slide right here, wow, it shows that lever in action with brutal clarity. With a DFL of 2, a pretty good 10% rise in operating income doesn't just mean a 10% gain for the owners. No, it doubles to a 20% gain. And that is the seduction, right? But the physics here are just inescapable. A minor 10% downturn becomes a punishing 20% loss. The lever works both ways, and it shows absolutely no mercy. But here's the thing, a simple calculation can't capture the whole story. Leverage doesn't just exist in a vacuum of a spreadsheet, it lives and breathes within the dynamic and often deeply unstable cycles of the real economy. The great economist Hyman Minsky had this really profound insight. He argued that the feeling of safety itself is what creates danger. The longer things go well, the more risk we're willing to take, the more leverage we pile on, and we end up unknowingly sowing the seeds of our own collapse. And this slide just lays out his theory beautifully. Minsky said that markets inevitably move through these 3 phases of debt. You start at hedge, everything's safe. Cash flow easily covers all your payments. But that's stability. It breeds confidence, and it pushes the system to speculative, where now your cash flow only covers the interest. And finally, that euphoria leads to Ponzi, the most fragile stage of all, where debts can only be paid by taking on even more debt. It's a system that's completely dependent on the prayer that asset prices will just rise forever. So what happens when these elegant theories, these cycles, these calculations, what happens when they collide with the messy, unpredictable friction of reality? You know, in the clean world of pure theory, you had these early models like the Modigliani-Miller theorem, and they basically concluded that a company's value actually increases with more debt. It seemed like a financial cheat code. But reality has a very nasty habit of getting in the way. The very real threat of bankruptcy, with all its costs and damage, creates this powerful counterforce that the early models just ignored. It turns out there's a limit. There's always a limit. And this is where we find one of the most troubling paradoxes in all of finance. When the market turns, the actions of every single investor, each one acting rationally to save themselves, can combine to create a completely irrational and unstable system. What's smart for one person becomes a catastrophe for everyone. And this is exactly how it unfolds. It starts with a single margin call. A lender just gets a little nervous. That forces an investor to sell assets. But that selling pushes prices down, which, you guessed it, triggers margin calls for other leveraged investors. And that creates this devastating domino effect, a fire sale cascade that can turn a small dip in the market into a full-blown crash. The definitive cautionary tale here is the collapse of long-term capital management. I mean, this was a hedge fund run by a team so brilliant it included actual Nobel laureates, but their elegant models operating with extreme leverage completely failed to account for the irrationality of a panic.
Their debt became a systemic poison, and its failure back in '98 threatened the entire global financial system. It forced a massive bailout just to stop a complete meltdown.
And this brings us to the final and I think most crucial layer. Because leverage isn't just about numbers on a page. It's an amplifier of the most volatile variable of them all, human nature. I mean, think about it. During a boom, those amplified profits don't just feel good. They feed our overconfidence. They make us feel invincible. They create euphoria. And then, when the market turns, the amplified losses trigger a disproportionate, almost animalistic panic that rational thought just can't break through.
And this whole emotional spiral is just supercharged by our own predictable cognitive flaws, our lack of self-control when faced with easy credit, our deep-seated instinct to just follow the herd, whether it's stampeding toward a cliff or away from one. And maybe the most dangerous of all, our tendency toward overconfidence, mistaking a lucky, leveraged bet for a sign of our own personal genius. So what you get, in essence, is this incredibly dangerous feedback loop between money and mind. The financial amplification feeds a psychological amplification. The thrill of a big win convinces us to take on even more risk. And that just accelerates our journey through Minsky's cycle, right to the edge of that unstable Ponzi stage, where the entire structure is balanced on a razor's edge. Which leaves us with a final, lingering question. Is this financial tool the true source of all this risk? Or is it maybe just a mirror, a powerful magnifying glass that reveals what was there all along? The genius, the greed, the fear, and the razor-thin line that separates them, a line that exists not on a balance sheet, but deep within ourselves.